while refusing to buy British products. Women were the enforcers of these movements because they were the ones buying goods for their homes. They saw it as their duty to make sure patriots were true to their word and boycotted British goods. Did American women really take part in the American Revolution? Women were an important part of the effort. Samuel Adams, praising the Daughters of Liberty, stated, "With ladies on our side, we can make every Tory tremble."
Abigail Adams was a crucial, outspoken patriot and key political advisor to her husband, John. While he was away, Abigail managed their Massachusetts farm and cared for their family. She witnessed the Battle of Bunker Hill and urged John to remember the ladies while creating new nations' laws. She accompanied John on diplomatic trips to London and Paris and was asked for her opinion during his presidency. John Adams considered Abigail his closest, most trusted advisor. At the age of 16, Sybil Ludington rode 40 miles through Putnam County for her father, Colonel Ludington. She alerted militia members the British had attacked Danbury. By morning, hundreds of men arrived to defend and fight. After the war, George Washington personally thanked her. After the Declaration of Independence was signed, the American Revolution became increasingly stressful for Martha Washington, as her husband George faced increased risks on the battlefield. Each winter, Martha would join her husband during his long winter encampment while fighting was stalled. She would do as much as she could for the soldiers. George kept Martha fully informed of the war's developments, and she performed his clerical work. She was his trusted confidant, one who was permitted to know military secrets. Martha arguably was the best-known camp follower, women who traveled with the troops, many times with the children for the survival of their families. The women cooked, cleaned, sewed, did laundry, nursed injured and sick soldiers. They did anything in the camp that needed to be done, and in return, their families were given food.
A leader of the Daughters of Liberty in Boston, it was Sarah Bradley Fulton, ideal to disguise the men. Sarah helped turn the group of Boston patriots into Mohawk Indians, painting their face and helping them with Native American clothing. Later, she returned them to the Bostonians. In 1776, Major John Brooks needed an urgent message to be delivered to George Washington. Sarah volunteered to carry the message along through the enemy lines of Charleston waterfront. She was successful. Esther D. Burt Reed was First Lady of the Pennsylvania when her husband was President of the Supreme Executive Council of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. With Benjamin Franklin's daughter Sarah, she founded the Ladies Association of Philadelphia to raise money for Washington's troops. In her essay called Sentiments of an American Woman, she called for both finance sacrifices and increased public roles of women. She strongly stated women were advocate patriots as men. She died in 1780 and was named Daughter of Liberty, posthumously because of her support for the American Revolution. Besides being Benjamin Franklin's daughter, Sarah Franklin Botch was a dedicated daughter of liberty. After starting the Ladies Association in Philadelphia with Esther Reed, and she did extensive relief work, she is best known for helping to outfit American soldiers. After Reed died, Sarah took over. She raised money for the Continental Army. Under her leadership in 1780, along with the Ladies Association, sold 2,200 shirts of Continental Army soldiers stationed at the winter quarters of Valley Forge.
A daughter of liberty, Deborah Sampson, literally wanted to fight for our country's liberty. Disguising herself as Robert Shirtleff, she joined the 4th Massachusetts Regiment. Serving in Captain George Webb's company of light infantry at West Point, New York, she undertook dangerous missions, scouting to assess British troop and equipment buildup in Manhattan. In June 1782, Sampson led 30 infantrymen on an expedition involving multiple encounters with Tories, including one-on-one battles. Deborah orchestrated a successful raid on a Tory residence and captured 15 men. For almost 2 years, her real identity remained hidden. She avoided discovery despite close calls. When shot in her left thigh, she removed the pistol ball herself. Her true identity was not discovered until she developed a high fever and lost consciousness at a Philadelphia hospital. After her time in the Army, Sampson led a typical life as a farmer's wife. But in 1802, she went on a year-long lecture tour, sharing her experience, becoming the first woman in America to do so. While speaking, she sometimes wore her military uniform. To recognize Deborah's extraordinary courage and dedication, Congress awarded compensation to Sampson's husband, honoring her legacy. Two kettles together determined to take an active role in the American Revolution. When the British arrived at Fort Schuyler, Two Kettles was one of the Oneidas who made their way through the British lines to warn Mohawk Valley settlements the British had arrived. When American General Herkimer's militia camped near Oriska, Two Kettles prepared 2 pistols. She joined her husband, Han Yeri, and other Oneidas accompanying Herkimer on his march to Fort Schuyler. During the resulting 1777 Battle of Oriskany on August 6th, Two Kettles fought alongside her husband, firing her own pistol until her husband's wrist was wounded. She began reloading his weapon so he could continue firing. Two Kettles was an excellent rider, and after the battle ended, she rode into the valley to report the outcome of the battle and to prepare people for the returning flood of wounded men. Later that year, Han Yeri joined the American Army fighting at Saratoga. Two Kettles again accompanied her husband, both to tend to his healing wound and to act as a messenger. To show his appreciation for her service, General Horatio Gates instructed Colonel Gansevoort at Fort Schuyler to deliver 3 gallons of rum for a winter's supply for her family. Two Kettles' last documented service occurred August 14th, 1781, at the fortified homestead of Fort Timmerman. This was a base for a small force of militia and Oneida warriors protecting grist mills on the nearby creek. While the men were away chasing raiders, 150 Loyalists and British allied Indians attacked. Two Kettles led a small group of Oneida and white women defending their homes. They drove the attackers off. On November 16th, 1776, Molly's husband, John Corbin, was one of 2,800 American soldiers defending northern Manhattan's Fort Washington from thousands of attacking Hessian troops led by the British. Too nervous to let her husband go to battle alone, she went with him. A nurse, she accompanied him into battle to care for injured soldiers. Her husband was hit. She had watched him carefully, so she was able to take his post. She fired his cannon with amazing speed. She continued firing until she herself was injured. After the battle, Corbin was disabled from her wounds. Congress awarded her a military pension in 1779 for her services, the first woman to receive a pension. She enrolled in the specially created Corps of Invalids at West Point, discharged officially in 1783.
Nancy Ward was born in the hills of eastern Tennessee. Ward's first husband was killed in a raid. Then called Nanyehi, had fought by his side, chewing lead bullets for his rifle to make them pointed and deadly. After the enemy killed him, she rallied the Cherokee warriors, leading the charge that brought victory to the Cherokees. Cherokee clans name her Gigow, or beloved woman. Her opinion was influential in tribal government because the Cherokees believed the Great Spirit spoke through a beloved woman. Nanyehi headed the Women's Council, sat on the Council of Chiefs, and had complete power over prisoners. She later married Bryant Ward, an English trader who lived among the Cherokee, and had a daughter with him. She then took the name Nancy Ward and learned English. As she came to understand more about the Anglo-American ways, she came to believe the best way for Cherokees to survive was to coexist with the new settlers. In 1781, Ward again warned settlers of an impending attack by the Cherokees. She asked for peace, this time personally meeting with the leaders. Ward told them, "You know that women are always looked upon as nothing, but we are your mothers. You are our sons. Our cry is all for peace. Let it continue. This peace must last forever." Irish immigrant and pacifist turned patriot spy Lydia Barrington Darragh defied British officers and braved a military checkpoint to bring official information to the Continental Army. In 1777, General William Howe attempted to expand his headquarters into the Darragh House when the British occupied Philadelphia. With help from a relative in the British Army, Lydia convinced the general to let the couple remain in their home. In exchange, they allowed General Howe to use their parlor to meet. Her family were Quakers, so the British never suspected they would take sides. Although publicly pacifist, their eldest son Charles joined the Continental Army. During the meetings, Lydia would hide in a closet next to the meeting room and listen. She then passed the information on to her son Charles. One day, she overheard Major Andre and other officers plan to attack Washington's forces at White Marsh, north of Philadelphia. She obtained a pass ostensibly to visit her children. Instead, she went to a pub and passed the information to an American soldier. The Patriots were prepared, so the skirmish lasted several days until General Howe gave up. Anna Smith Strong from Setauket, Long Island, was involved in General Washington's spy project, the Culper Spy Ring, headed by Major Benjamin Talmadge. Talmadge recruited Strong and other Long Island and New York residents to spy on British soldiers. The information was slipped to Abraham Woodhull, Strong's next-door neighbor. It was Anna's job to signal fellow spy Caleb Brewster information was ready for him to pick up. Her signals to Brewster were ingenious. She simply hung out her laundry in plain sight of the British soldiers. A black petticoat with handkerchiefs on her clothesline meant a message was ready to be picked up. The number of handkerchiefs she hanged corresponded to the cove where the message was hidden. Her messaging system was never broken through the entire revolution, and no one in the Culper spy ring was ever caught. The British never suspected laundry was the signal.
At the age of 22, Deborah Champion's father, Colonel Henry Champion, asked her to deliver a message to General Washington. She disguised herself as an old woman traveling with an older family slave. The British guard thought she was really an old lady and let her pass to complete her mission. One important mission was carrying the money to pay the American army. The British passed their rights through their lines without questions. It never occurred to them that an old woman was carrying money. Mamie Kate was enslaved on Georgia Governor Stephen Hurd's plantation. When the Tories took her boss prisoner during the Battle of Kettle Creek, he was sentenced to death. Mamie Kate asked prisoner guards if she could bring her master fresh bed linens and food. They agreed. She entered the prison with a huge basket on her head filled with food and linen. Hurd was a small man. He hid in a large basket on her head, and Kate would walk out of the prison with him hidden on her head. Although this seems unbelievable, his family credited her with saving him. Afterwards, Hurd freed her, gave her a house and land. He paid her to work for him, but Hurd did not liberate her husband or her children. Nancy Hart was a rebel heroine, a tough, strong, and resourceful woman who outsmarted Tory soldiers. 6 British soldiers stopped at her cabin looking for a certain Whig leader, demanding to know if he had stopped at her farm. Although the man they were tracking had been there, she denied seeing anyone. Convinced that she was lying, one of the Tories shot and killed Hart's prize gobbler in order to cook the bird. Entering her cabin, they stacked her weapons and in the corner demanded a drink. Hart obligated by serving wine. While the soldiers drank wine, Hart sent her daughter to the spring for a bucket of water, secretly instructing her to blow a conch shell hidden in a nearby stump. To alert neighbors, tourists were in the cabin. While Hart served the unwelcome visitors, she passed their muskets through the open window cabin wall to her daughter and still outside. When the soldiers finally noticed, they tried to get the remaining weapons. She warned she would shoot the next man that moved. And knowing her warning, one man made a deadly mistake of approaching her, and she shot. She held the rest off until her husband Benjamin and neighbors arrived. Benjamin wanted to shoot the remaining hostages, but Nancy insists on hanging them.
Nine-year-old Susan Boudinot made her own patriotic statement. With her mother, Hannah, Susan visited New Jersey Governor William Franklin, a loyalist, unlike his father, Benjamin Franklin. Susan asked if she wanted tea, declined, but was served tea anyway. She pretended to sip it, then threw the tea out the window, establishing herself as a young revolutionary. In later life, Susan married Pennsylvania Chief Justice and Attorney General William Bradford. Enslaved Phyllis Wheatley was a literary pioneer of American poetry. Born in West Africa, she was sold into slavery at a young age and transported to North America. The Wheatley family of Boston bought her. The Wheatley daughter, Mary, taught Phyllis to read and write. When the family saw her emerging talent as a poet, they encouraged her writing. She wrote her first book, Poems on Varying Subjects, in 1773. Published in England, it made her the first African-American author of a published book of poetry. The Wheatleys manumitted Phyllis shortly after the book was published. During the 1775 Siege of Boston, she wrote a poem to George Washington called To His Excellency George Washington, and sent it to him. Washington invited Wheatley to visit him. In 1776, Thomas Paine published her poem to Washington in the Pennsylvania Gazetteer. Lucy Terry was kidnapped from Africa in the 1730s and sold to Ebenezer Wells. In 1756, Lucy Terry married Abijah Prince, a prosperous, free black man who purchased her freedom. They moved to Vermont and had 6 children. Lucy was well known for her speaking ability. A friend said the fluency of her speech captivated all around her. She used her gift to defend her family's rights and property when someone tried to claim their farm. A prolific poet, only one of her poems survives. She wrote Bar's Fight in 1746 about a French-led raid in which her friends were killed by Native Americans. Bar's Fight is the earliest existing poem written by an African American. It was not published until 1854.
Mercy Otis Warren was a published poet, political playwright, and satirist during the age of the American Revolution, a time when women were encouraged and expected to keep silent on political affairs. Warren not only engaged the leading figures of the day, such as John, Abigail, and Samuel Adams, she was an outspoken commentator and historian, the leading female intellectual of the Revolution and early Republic. An avid patriot, Warren wrote political dramas denouncing British policies and key officials in Massachusetts, especially Governor Thomas Hutchinson. Her 1772 satire, The Adulator, published anonymously in the newspaper, The Massachusetts Spy, criticized the colonial governor's policy. She not only supported the Boston Tea Party and boycotts of British imports, she urged all other women to join her. From the outset of the American Revolution, Warren began writing its history. She published her history in 1805 as History of the Rise, Progress, and Termination of the American Revolution. This was the first nonfiction book published by a woman in America. When her brother left the Maryland Journal in 1774, the revolutionary paper he founded, Mary Catherine Goddard took over the Baltimore paper and ran it throughout the Revolution. The paper was a vehicle for her strong support of the fight for freedom. She reprinted Thomas Paine's Common Sense in it, wrote editorials against British brutality and the Battle of Bunker Hill. When the Second Continental Congress voted to distribute the Declaration of Independence, January 1777, she was the first publisher to offer use of her press, happy to take the risk of being associated with the treasonous document. Called the Goddard Broadside, it was the first to contain names of all the men who signed the document. She placed her own name on the bottom. Baltimore in Maryland, printed by Mary Catherine Goddard. When Oneida Chief Oscandoha learned of the Continental Army's plight at Valley Forge, he sent 50 Oneida warriors with many, many baskets of corn. He also sent cook and nurse Polly Cooper. Not only did she feed the troops, she taught them to cook the corn and how to make nutritious soup from corn, nuts, and fruit. While at Valley Forge, she spent much of her day nursing the soldiers. Polly would not accept pay for her service. She refused because it was her duty to help friends in need. In appreciation, Martha Washington gave Polly a beautiful black shawl to say thank you. The shawl to this day is treasured by the Oneidas and is on display at the Oneida National Cultural Center.
In 1780, enslaved Elizabeth Freeman attended a reading of the new Massachusetts Constitution. When she heard the phrase, "all men are born free and equal," she was empowered to try for her own freedom. Attorney Theodore Seguin took her case. He was added Brome, a male slave, to the case, arguing according to the state constitution. Elizabeth and Brome were not slaves. The court sided with Elizabeth and Braun, making slave unconstitutional in Massachusetts. Afterward, Elizabeth took a paid position with the Sedgwick family and became a cherished member of the family. She is buried in the Sedgwick family cemetery. Early 1776, American forces attacked the British in Norfolk. The Wilford B family and their slaves, including Mary Preith, sought refuge aboard British ships. The Patriots relentlessly bombarded of Norfolk and forced the British fleet to sail to New York. Mary stayed with the British in New York throughout the war. Although she's still legally enslaved, she met and married Caesar Preith. The Wildebeest asked the British for Mary's return, but the British had offered freedom to the enslaved. July 31st, 1783, the Preith family boarded the ship Abundance and sailed to Nova Scotia, where they lived for almost 10 years. Because of the many broken promises, more than 1,000 people, including the Preiths, choose to sail to Sierra Leone, January 1792, to begin a new life in Freetown. Caesar died shortly after their arrival. Mary became a prominent church and community member. Although her parents were loyalists, Lucy Flucker was an avid reader. When she married low-born Boston bookstore owner and admin patriot Henry Knox, Lucy was disowned. An artillery expert, he was pressured by family friends, General Thomas Gage, to enlist, so he joined the Patriots. The couple corresponded frequently during their early services. She visited his war camps as much as possible. She honored her skills as a seamstress, making waistcoats and breeches for the soldiers. She became close to Martha Washington during the times, so close that she stayed at Mount Vernon during the siege of Yorktown. Lucy was well known for being independent and demanding equal authority in her home.
Born into a wealthy Pennsylvania society family, Grace married Joseph Galloway, a prominent lawyer and politician. When her father died, her inheritance was put in Joseph's name, as they did in those days. Before the Revolution, she was quite prominent. Since her husband was a loyalist, her property was attainted, and she lost it. Because of the danger, Joseph fled with their daughter, taking refuge with the British in New York City while waiting to sail to England. Grace refused to join them, and instead she remained to defend and reclaim her land. She refused to vacate her home, staying alone to defend her confiscated family property. During this time, she was embraced by the Philadelphia Quaker community, who helped her survive by living more simply. She sued to regain her home, but her health suffered. Too sick to travel, she died in 1782 and left her property to her daughter Betsy. After Joseph died in 1803, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled and gave the full estate back to Betsy. Native American Molly Brant was a Mohawk leader and was the prominent common-law wife and consort of Sir William Johnson, British Superintendent of Indian Affairs. They had 8 children. She ran Johnson's household, served as his hostess, managed purchases, supervised servants, slaves, and his household at Fort Johnson. When Johnson died in 1774, he left her his estate. She was crucial in maintaining alliances between the British and the Iroquois Confederacy. During the American Revolution, she sided with British, providing them with information and assistance. When the war turned against the British, she fled to Canada with thousands of loyalists and continued to advocate for Mohawk land rights. A courageous woman, a woman ahead of her time, Penelope Barker, was one of many outstanding women who contributed to the American Revolution. A true believer in the cause and a passionate persuader, she went from house to house, gathering support from the Edenton women for the American fight for independence. The women organized by Mrs. Barker openly stood up to the king, refused to drink tea, and boycotted British goods. Barker refused to hide, insisting the women publicly sign the petition and using their own names.
Barker said, "We women have taken too long to let our voices be heard. We are signing our names to a document, not hiding ourselves behind costumes like the men in Boston at their Tea Party. The British will know who we are." Barker sent copies of the petition and signatures to local and British papers. The news of the Edenton Tea Party quickly reached Britain. The petition penned at the Tea Party was nothing less than a bold display of patriotism and love of liberty. Barker's pronouncement shocked the British, as well as colonists still loyal to the king. Although political resistance was common in the 1770s, but an organized women's movement was not. The Edenton Tea Party truly shocked the Western world. The Edenton women represented America's frustration, the need from America to be out from under the heel of the British monarchy. The women of Edenton signed the agreement. They were determined to give memorable proof of their patriotism and could not be indifferent on any occasion that appears nearly to affect the peace and happiness of our country. It is a duty that we owe, not only to our near, dear connections, but to ourselves. Born into a prominent Philadelphia family, Peggy Shippen Arnold is believed to have played a significant part in her husband's betrayal of our country. It is thought Peggy introduced her husband to John Andre. Instead of leaving, Peggy remained in Philadelphia, where she could pass a chain of coded letters to Andre containing information from her husband, Benedict Arnold. When Arnold's defection was revealed to the Continental Army, Peggy feigned hysteria to avert suspicion about her involvement in the conspiracy. George Washington believed her. She helped delay Arnold's capture by Patriot forces, allowing him to flee the Continental Army to New York. The Philadelphia City Council banished Peggy, so she joined Arnold in New York City, held by the British, later moving to London after the British defeat at Yorktown. Britain welcomed them with open arms. Queen Charlotte gave her a 100-pound annual pension. King George presented her with 350 pounds for her services.
Westchester was considered a neutral zone since it lay between the Loyalist stronghold in New York City and the Patriot stronghold in the Hudson Valley. Our residents were robbed frequently by both sides during the war. The plunderers, usually referred to cowboys or skinners, scavenged local farms of both Loyalists and Patriots, taking food, animals, and valuables. Susan Valentine of Yonkers was a member of the famed Valentine clan, whose home on Valentine Hill twice was used by George Washington as their headquarters in 1776 and 1781. The hill was frequently stage area for armies on the move. Patriots camped there after fleeing New York City summer of 1776. General Sir Bastry Tarleton attacked Patriot soldiers camped on Valentine's Hill in 1778. The British also camped there in 1778 and 1779. In July of 1781, the combined French and American armies came together at Valentine Hill before marching to Kingbridge for the grand reconnaissance of the British position on Manhattan. As a young woman, Susan single-handedly prevented a band of villains from entering the Valentine's home, greeting them outside her door with a very large oven stove shovel. She stood there, she stood her ground. As they attempted to intimidate her and push her out of the way, she raised the shovel in the air and threatened and told them she would split their heads for the first man who dared to cross her threshold. Her courage and determination kept her family valuables safe. Her second encounter was not so successful. A close friend was going on a long journey and did not dare carry his gold while traveling into the wilds. He gave it to Susan for safekeeping. She immediately hid it in her dress until he returned. That very evening, Skinners forced her way into her bedroom and demanded money. She loudly denied having any money and called her brother, who ran to her defense. Using the ensued scuffle to escape unobserved, she was spotted and grabbed. The money fell on the floor while the Skinners literally took it out of her. The villains ran off, delightful with their Hoar gang. Another attacked the young woman, brave Yonkers woman. One of the richest women in the colonies at the age of 22 was Mary Phillips. Her inherits 1/3 of her father's roughly 250 square miles. Highland patent with spawn from the Hudson Highland on the west bank of the lower Hudson River to the Connecticut colony in the east. In 1758, she married in New York Englishman Roger Morris, who fought in the French and Indian War. Roger was appointed to the Governor Council of the province of New York. In 1759, they built their country estate, Mount Morris, in northern Manhattan. It was now in Washington Heights. The family lived there until 1775, when Roger fled to England on the onset of the Revolution. In October 1779, the New York Act attainder named landowners who acted injuriously to the state, declared them guilty of acts of high treason. Only 3 women were named traitors in the American Revolution, convicted under the New York law of high treason. Mary Phillips Morris was one of them. In 1779, the government of the colony of the New York seized both Morris' personal property and Mary's inheritance. The family relocated to England. In 1809, the Morris Heron finally received from John Jacobs Astor 20,000 pounds sterling for their rights to the dispute land. Mary died in York, England, at the age of 96.
General John Odell's mother, Margaret, was a patriot who lived in Westchester. Like much of the neutral ground, this area was infested with marauding parties of cowboys and skinners. General Odell's family was at home when a party of lawless ruffians with blacked faces and armed with muskets entered the house. They locked the women in the cellar, then questioned the father. He refused to give them information or money, so they hung him on a nearby tree. He was almost unconscious when they cut him down to repeat their demands. He refused to answer. They hung him again, this time leaving him for dead. The Odell women escaped from the cellar. Margaret boldly assaulted the brutes. They attacked her, beating her with their muskets. She fought back and managed to escape, although she had a few broken ribs. The women cut down her husband, saving his life. Before the American Revolution, Lorenda Holmes was a loyal subject of the English government. When the Continental Army arrived, the Americans seized her Dock Street home. Angry, Lorenda volunteered to be a British courier to bring messages to British ships. Using the Patriot password to get to the docks, she signaled the British ship Asia with her handkerchief. American soldiers saw her and threatened to shoot her, but the Asia's captain sent a boat to rescue her. This so angered the New York Patriots, she became a target. She moved to Eastchester. After the British landed at Throg's Neck, Lorenda guided 16 Loyalist men through Eastchester's woods, taking them to join the British Army, further angering the Patriots. After the British defeated the Americans at White Plains, Lorenda joined the Royal Army on their difficult march to Fort Washington in northern Manhattan. New York still was full of angry patriots. Lorenda was urged to sail to England immediately. She did, leaving everything behind. When Susanna Phillips Robinson inherited her portion of Highland Patent, the Robinsons built a home on the land. With the onset of the American Revolutionary War, her husband Beverly sought to remain uninvolved, but in time relented. Susanna was fiercely loyalist and no doubt encouraged him to join. In 1777, he formed the Loyal American Regiment, which proved to be a very active loyalist force in the conflict.
Grace Isaac married St. John's pastor Reverend Luke Babcock, and they lived in the house on St. John's Glebe. Reverend Babcock was arrested in the early days of the Revolution and jailed in Hartford because of his loyalty to the king. Sick traveling home, he was deliriously feverish by the time he arrived. He died several days later. The parish allowed Grace with her family to remain in the house during the war. She was quite beautiful, so was courted by British and American officers. Particularly, Colonel Gist wanted to marry her and used the excuse of patrolling Selma River Road for the Patriots to visit her. One night while he was calling on her, the area was surrounded by 4 different British units who were determined to capture him. Grace helped Gist and his men escape. She leaned out the window, signaling them to go another way with her handkerchief. During the winter of 1780, a gang of 8 cowboys, loyalist thieves, broke into the parsonage wearing disguises. After robbing the widow Babcock and her defenseless family of everything valuable, their leader made a deep bow to Mrs. Babcock and said, "Fare you well and fare you better, and when I die, I'll send you a letter." Fortunately for her family, Colonel James Van Cortlandt, a patriot of the Westchester militia, was able to arrange for the Patriots to provide restitution to Mrs. Babcock for everything her family lost. Ann Fisher Miller, born and raised in White Plains, married Elijah Miller. The family lived on his grandfather's farm in North White Plains. After she lost both her husband and 2 of her sons in the war, she allowed George Washington to use her home for his headquarters during the Battle of White Plains, and later 2 more times. Her farm was covered with soldiers' tents, and she nursed soldiers who were wounded during the Battle of White Plains. The tales of the Westchester Tea Parties were found in the McDonald Papers, a collection of oral histories. Interviews conducted in Westchester 60 years after the end of the American Revolution. McDonald interviewed witnesses to the American Revolution about their memories. Their interviews were republished by the Westchester Historical Society in 1986. Our appreciation to Philomena Dunn, Regent Emeritus of the Hudson River Patriots, and current Regent Cindy Prayman for sharing this version of the story. Please enjoy a small portion of the lives of Westchester women during the tumultuous early days of America.
The first event took place in T-Town in 1776, named to honor the Women's Rebellion. This was the first Westchester Tea Party. During the summer of 1776, tea became scarce in the country. But since drinking tea was considered unpatriotic, drinking it was frowned upon. Husbands found it was easy to drink tea since they could go to the pub, but women could not. Women longed for this forbidden beverage and secretly enjoyed it. Tea became a scarce in the interior of the country. Those who had tea had held on it, thinking it would rise to its value. This led to the female insurrection in several counties bordering the Hudson River. Storehouses containing the converted Bowen tea, at the time almost the only kind of tea in general used, was besieged by thirsty housewives, sometimes for 7 days and at a time. The owner was compelled to sell it at a reasonable price. August 1776, about 100 county women suddenly appeared at Fishkill, where they were paraded in front of the house of Colonel Brinkoff. They intimidated the military officer, so he brought peace by giving them one chest from his store on the term that they proposed. He was also intimidated by the women. A few days later, he sold out the entire stock of tea to the New York spectators, who immediately brought it to the North River, put it afloat, and conveyed it to Albany.
A short time after the 1776 Battle of White Plains took place, this excursion, the Second Westchester Tea Party, took place. Tea still was scarce and a prized possession. New York City merchant John Arthur closed up shop and moved north for safety, bringing his merchandise, including bohea, a black Chinese tea. Word soon got out he had tea. Arthur tried to carefully conceal from female inquisition the fact that he had in his possession sundry chests of the delectable leaf, but by some means it became whispered about that such was the case. This news spread quickly from farmhouse to farmhouse until it reached the area along the Hudson.
These good housewives had so long abstained from this bewitching infusion, they began to forget its joyous qualities. The information that came from the direction of Bedford brought back their old appetites. Thoughts hovered about bohea during the day, and they fancied its fragrances during the visions of the night. The tea was within their reach. They chose Jonah Orser's better half as captain of their country. She was a woman of undaunted resolution. She ruled her own household, and she ruled her own neighborhood. Reports from that time tell us upward of 30 females assembled from the precincts of Sing Sing, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, and Weakersqueak, all mounted on horseback, eager for the enterprise. They got lost, but women stop and ask directions. Unfortunately for John Arthur, the women waited at a fork in the highway, and as bad luck would have it, Arthur himself was riding toward them. The women confronted him, demanding to buy tea at the non-tax price. Arthur was so intimidated, he gave each woman a chest of tea without charge. The next morning, he rose early, gathered all his tea, sold it, the entire stock, to a New York City tea merchant. Returning home, he packed up his house and left, never to be seen again. Or so they thought. Although the Westchester women never saw him again, he did not disappear. Arthur purchased the Tabor farm in Dutchess County, and he spent the rest of his life running the farm. The Hudson River Patriots chapter of the DAR believes they found John Arthur, the alleged victim of the Second Westchester Tea Party. He returned to Westchester County for eternity, buried in the old Quaker burial ground in today's Armonk. Well, thank you. The American experiment was unique and improbable in 1776, when Thomas Jefferson penned the Declaration of Independence. The American colonies defied Britain, then the most powerful nation on earth. As we look around the world at how difficult it still is for democracy and freedom to flourish, America seems like a political miracle. We appreciate the staff and volunteers of Phillips Manor Hall for their support and kindness in allowing us to share stories of just a few of the many women whose commitment and passion to freedom created the United States from 13 unique colonies. And we are grateful to our audience who joined us tonight, both here and at home. Thank you for allowing our group of historians to share these stories of a few American women. I want to thank Judith Waite and Ken Davis for joining me tonight to help us share the stories, and thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much, Mary and panel. Do we have any questions in the room or online? Sure, I'm going to give you the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Thank you so much, Mary, for putting this together. I don't know if you were the main one or everybody put it together, but what amazed me was that I had heard of so few of those women. I mean, the Phillips, we've heard of them, but I had heard so few, and it was really amazing how much they did. So thank you really for showing that to us.
Well, thank you for your comment, Marcia. I appreciate your thinking about the various women, and many of you know when I became Yonkers historian, the first thing I said, I want to uncover forgotten history, Yonkers and otherwise. We have too much in Yonkers and Westchester, New York State, the country, that we just don't know because it's just never been revealed to us. We didn't learn it in school. And I think it's kind of, I don't want to say it's a travesty, but we need to share more of our history so people know how great our people, our women were, and how much they were responsible for our country being what it was.
But the first part of the presentation was about women outside of Westchester, and that was also really interesting. But of course, Westchester is closest to her.
Thank you. We do have a question or a comment online maybe you want to elaborate on from Elaine, saying very interesting that some of the women's husbands got compensated by the government for their service.
Yes, that was very interesting. And I think it's a revelation of what the colonies were like at the time.
Any other questions here in the room or online? Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us in person and online. Our next lecture will be on Wednesday, April 8th, with Stephen Paul DeVillo talking about the Westchester Neutral Grant. So I hope you will join us then. Thank you so much.